Well, happy Tuesday morning here. Welcome to the Markcast. Reed here inside today. June gloom here in Seattle. So we're staying inside, staying dry. RIP fan control football here. Just found out breaking news today coming out via friend of the show, Ben Fisher over at the Sports Business Journal. Maybe we could talk about that as well. Also have some TV tidbits we can talk about. Ratings not out in full because of Juneteenth, but Mike Mitchell just sent over some stuff. So we can talk about that. We have Pat Ruffino here. Pat just put on a phenomenal shirt. I really like that. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, I think if you've seen my interviews, I usually try to go flamboyant for my guests when they come on. So I think, I got this one going, and then we'll see what's next. And I really want to show off my tattoos.
It's good. I think you gotta if you got it, you gotta kind of flaunt it here. And I think no one's gonna beat you up or say anything about you wearing the flamboyant shirts. I think as long as you can rock it, I think that's what you need to do.
It's got owls with NVGs on them.
That's good. I don't know what that means, but that's good. Interesting stuff. First off, just not USFL news here. We're going to do obviously the recaps, and we have our big playoff talk we're going to talk about. But fan control football, taking the year off, at least trying to sell franchises, all of that stuff. Do you have any quick takes on that? I don't want to derail too much of the show, but
I mean, I'm a little disappointed. The league itself was very gimmicky and kind of weird compared to the traditional arena game, but I mean, I don't think anyone can deny that there was talent. And I know everyone talks about Turpin was in there and whatnot, but, they did send two other guys to the NFL. They sent a bunch of people to the XFL. They sent a decent amount of people to the CFL. I mean, in the end, it was a cool way, in my opinion, that, okay, maybe you're not going to go to the NFL or the XFL or USFL, but you are going to build your brand because the amount of air quote celebrity that was in it. So, I mean, it's a little disappointing for that. They did a pretty good job, in my opinion, of boosting these people's infamy. You see how guys boost up their follower accounts on all of their accounts and whatnot. So, football isn't for anyone, but having 12,000 followers on the social media platform, is never a bad thing for some of these guys.
Yeah, I thought they were kind of finally figuring out their niche, right? Where we're really not competing. I mean, and I know they said, but we're really not competing with USFL or XFL. We're getting maybe a lot more, off the street kind of guys that want an opportunity and want to play. And maybe from, some of those we can kind of cultivate on. I always agreed with Mike. I thought the field needed to be bigger. I thought it was too tight. The other takeaway thing on here was we had Rob on here. Worst photo ever of this. I don't know if Rob got arrested in the previous slide. We have his mugshot on here, but I've gone back and forth. Back when Paul was on the show, Paul and I had no love lost for a lot of the fan control football guys, but I certainly appreciate what they do and what they did. Patrick Deese has been on the show. And I mean, I think they're hardworking guys, but I do think biting off a little bit more than they can chew here, trying to do basketball and kind of everything else this year as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's any, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it's any different than when people are talking about expansion in the XFL or the USFL. It's hey man, you're talking about benching 315 when you can't put up 225. You know what I mean? Let's keep repping the 225 before we put that extra plate on. Maybe a little bit of a silly analogy, but I feel like sometimes there's, we're overly competitive with stuff. So it's kind of hey man, let's make sure that our house is in order before we do anything crazy. And that's kind of how I felt with it.
It is interesting. I guess they're going to try to sell off. They have Jerry Kurtz here, who helped with he was the former Arena Football League commissioner, helping kind of sell some of these franchises. They said go for the high 6 figures, low 7 figures. I don't know. I mean, they have the celebrity. We could do a whole show about this. They have the celebrity owners. They have all that. I don't want to deep dive, but I don't know. I think there might be a little bit more value there if you get. I don't know. I think those fan bases are maybe a little bit more locked in if you're trying to get, hey, we're selling the USFL or an XFL franchise. But they had the last goal here. Given the capital markets currently, quite frankly, no one's going to tell you it's not capital intensive to run a sports league. We thought maybe the better idea in this environment is to focus on the technology. So they're going to license off, it sounds like, a lot of their tech, try to get money that way, and then maybe spin this up later. I don't see anyone low sevens purchasing a fan control football franchise.
No, and apologies for the train, but I mean, I wouldn't pay, $1 million for a fan control football league, like, or team. Like, I mean, I can do the quick math. I think there's like 15 players on the roster or something like that. You know, like their offensive line plays like three games a day or something like that. It's like, I mean, I feel like, you know, they play 6 games. I feel like I could drop 250 on that, you know, 250K on that and still be able to pay people pretty decently. I don't know. You know, like, I'd have to do the math like on a spreadsheet, and, you know, I know the FCF week in review right now, but
yeah.
I mean,
no, it's interesting. I just thought, you know, get off the show here, at least talk about this while it's fresh.
Well,
it is.
The real victim is always who? The players, right?
Yeah.
You know, like we're seeing those guys go to different leagues and make plays and like be, you know, able to make more money. And it's like, you know, you have these guys from non-traditional backgrounds in college, you know, you just go to a tryout in Atlanta, and then next thing you know, like Bryson Aline, Andrew Jamil. I know, you know, a lot of people talk about Turpin, but we all know the reason why Turpin wasn't in the NFL. Like, granted, he, you know, made his way. He did his tour for the last 2 years before getting to the Cowboys. But like a guy that doesn't get talked about a lot is Travis Tavoynian. I think that's his name. He's on the Brahmas now, but he spent about a year and change with some NFL teams, and like,
he was with the Seahawks for a hot second. I remember him getting signed.
Seahawks, the Giants, the Vikings. Like, the guy's probably made like $300,000 in the NFL, you know, between all his pit stops, and it's like that guy was in the. Sorry, that guy was in F. You know, always getting blown up on this show. I'm a very popular man. It's probably Latraden calling me to make fun of me, but I mean, like, you know, that's who the victims are when it comes down to this. You know, when anytime a air quote league fails.
Yeah.
So
interesting stuff. So today we're going to run through all the playoff stuff. Mike Mitchell sent over some numbers. So because of Juneteenth, the USFL ratings are off, you know, a day. Prelims for the Sunday night, 631,000. That was for the big, you know, clinching it all, you know, Michigan Stars, kind of all that stuff. Interesting. Mike sent these over, and just for us to kind of ponder here. For the season, the USFL after 9 weeks has averaged 622,641 viewers per game. The NBC games have averaged 900,000. That includes the Derby lead in 904,000 on average. Fox has averaged 687,375. So just kind of interesting to put that in perspective. When you balance out the Fox and NBC for the USFL, Mike has done the math here. 622,000 season average for the over-the-air broadcast games. XFL had 7 ABC games, and those averaged 622,000 also. So literally the exact same number on average for the USFL, 24 Fox and NBC averaged over, and then the XFL with the 7 to 40 for that. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what are we gonna? Well, what's the saying? It's like numbers. You know, anything could be like a statistic that goes in your favor. You're gonna have XFL guys who are like, you know, going to take that number and, you know, spin it around to their favor. You're going to have USFL guys spin it around to their favor. I mean, I mean, until we see, you know, the finances of these leagues, like, I don't know what's good because I don't know what they expect to be good. So if they're only expecting 300K per thing, well, they crushed it, right? If they were expecting 700, they were, you know, missing their mark. So that's kind of something that I always like try to think about. It's like,
That's got to go on Do Not Disturb here.
all that was, but sorry, lost my train of thought. Everyone's freaking calling me today. Long story short, but like it comes down to their finances, right, and like what their goals are. So I mean, that's something, you know, that can be talked about, and I think, you know, got hinted on with this, you know, $60 million loss of the XFL is like, what are you okay with? You know what I mean?
I thought the 60 million loss thing is insane. All right, moving on here. I had, as promised, I had a couple tweets ready here following the USFL playoff clinching scenarios here. I said the entire North Division playoffs. Are you kidding me? Playoffs. We're seeing crazy here, and then I was proud of this one. USFL saw the XFL with 1-4-6 team in this playoffs and says, "Hold my beer." I was pretty impressed with that. Pat, what do we make here? Playoffs clinch South a little bit more interesting with this North Division. What do you make of this?
I mean, I don't even know. Like,
I was thinking about it yesterday. I think it's really bad. I think it's really bad. I don't know. The Maulers are not a good team. I don't think that the
I see. I'll do a hard stop there. I disagree. I think they also the Maulers put out James Morgan, which I get it. He was, I don't want to say a sexy name, but like an FIU guy, Division I player, drafted by the Jets, 4th-round pick. Like they go 0-2 with him at the helm. They bring in Troy Williams, and like something I talk about with Troy all the time is obviously his athletic rushing ability, but the similarity to him and Cole Kelly is that when Troy is playing, he's avoiding sacks because he's able to run around. Like Cole avoids sacks because he's 6'7", 250 pounds or something like that. And like when you hit him low, like he's going to throw the ball away and whatnot. Like Troy does the same thing. But that defense has been like an amazing defense this whole year. I mean, Mark Gilbert's a stud. You got Tizzino. I mean, that could easily be, and we're talking minimal movement here, but that could have easily been a 6-4 team if they went with Troy Williams. Now, what's the reality of it? They didn't, so they ended up 4-6. But like, I mean, I think the Maulers, and we talked about it last week, is like, why not them? You know what I mean? Like they're pretty goofy team. They could, kind of make some plays and whatnot as well. I mean, that's my opinion. Like, I'm not trying to shill for the Maulers, but at the same time, like you have to recognize the talent. Like they have 2 stud interior defensive linemen. The linebackers are running all over the place. They got a pretty decent secondary, and then they have some good role players in the secondary who aren't stars or anything, but they do their job. And every play in football works if everyone just does their job. So, and that's what they're doing, man. And and it's more kudos to that coaching staff than anything else.
We got a couple comments here, Lewis. Stars are the best team in the North. Can't believe they aren't in the playoffs. Joe says Pittsburgh was one missed field goal in Week 9 away from going 5-5. Best defense in the league. Maulers are absolutely playoff worthy. This is probably the homer in me, right? And I wasn't. To me, I didn't feel like I was as bothered with the Renegades because it felt like they were kind of on an upward swing. That if they had Luis Perez the whole season, right? You're saying the same thing with Troy Williams, but to me, it just felt like they had kind of like pushed their way in and earned it in versus like the Stars really just kind of crapping themselves out of contention here. It's kind of how I look at it.
And we talked about this a couple times on the show. Is like the Stars, their biggest bugaboo was their offensive line. Like Case Cookus is probably in an ice bath right now, and they didn't improve their offensive line that much. Like they had a pretty decent guard in Gilmore. One guy, CJ Perez was a liability at center. Aaron Cervais, they bumped him between tackle and guard. He was a liability. In Week 6, they pick up this guy, Drew Himmelman, who was a commander for 5 minutes and was with the Broncos last year. And, he changed that whole dynamic of the offensive line once he started starting and whatnot. So it continued to just progress and whatnot from there. A lack of run game. They went into the season with only 2 running backs, Dexter Williams and Colburn. Colburn gets hurt. They pick up this Jameis Williams guy. They had injuries at tight end. It just kind of felt like on that offensive side of the ball where they were so dynamic, they did not improve, especially on the offensive line, and they reaped what they sowed.
I happy for obviously Matt Mangle, friend of the show, and he got a little roughed up in that game as well. He's fine. I had to tweet that out, but I don't know. It feels weird. We'll get into the games here, but I just it's all funny until it's not. It was the big joke with the XFL, and we had a lot of things to say about it, and now it's going to happen in an 8-team league with 10 games, and I do think Andy Murray had. I need to pull up his tweet. He sent over that we need to in both of these leagues here. Let me pull this up here just while I'm talking about it. We need to improve Both it says here, USFL and XFL have to change their playoff formats. Under 500 teams winning the division is one thing, but the lack of a wild card system exposes the flaws that undermine teams that deserve it. The Battlehawks and Gamblers were disserviced. Same discussion we had before. Any other thoughts on that? I mean, Andy and I kind of beat the table at that during the XFL season.
I mean, I think there's no qualms about the two teams that got into the South Division. And I think really the only way this doesn't change for both these leagues is if the Maulers or the Panthers win the championship. I mean, Birmingham's so good. Like, we're essentially watching the South Division playoffs right now, or the championship possibly this weekend between them and the Breakers. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, I said the same thing about the Northern Division. The Northern Division is the actual true championship because Houston's going to beat whoever they play. And obviously I was proved wrong, and I think I have a lot of love for the Renegades. I feel like I've talked to a decent amount of those players, and I don't like saying I'm a fan of any team because I'm more of a fan of the players and whatnot. So to see Arlington win that game was obviously, kind of awesome in a weird way, but at the same time, it's I totally understand everyone's discourse, and the Gamblers players are all going home now, and they probably feel a little bit slighted, but at the same time, if they won, things are a little different. The Battlehawks, I don't want to say all they had to do, but if the Battlehawks beat Seattle, no one's shilling for 6-4 is a lot different than 7-3, if that makes sense.
I just feel bad. I know Anthony Miller was really looking forward to covering the Gamblers all the way through the USFL championship game. So I think that's probably the biggest disservice here is we don't get Anthony Miller's journalistic takes here. But maybe he can stomach it and watch the North Division and kind of give us some recaps that way.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing WNBA right now. So I'm sure that's that's very thrilling for him.
So let's get into this here. So I did watch this game here. Like I said, Matt Mangle kind of getting beat up and all this. Pittsburgh over the Generals, not even closer, 26-6. Like I said, Matt being able to walk off kind of afterward, really happy about that. What did you make of the game?
I mean, I think it just kind of showed you have good DeAndre and bad DeAndre. I mean, there's even coming up to this game, there was a lot of nonsense on the Twitter about Trey Williams leaving the team and then coming back, and then a lot of people kind of got caught up in the whole well, he technically didn't leave, and it's this still doesn't eliminate the problem of something is going on there. And then after the game, he called out the offensive coordinator and whatnot, and I talked to a couple people about this in the DMs. I was not players, just people who are Generals fans. I was do you think if they won the game, went to the playoffs, he'd be released on Monday? I like Trey. I think he's a shifty back, but you're a 30-year-old running back, dude. The opportunities start dwindling. You know what I mean? So I mean, he's had a nice career over the alt league, played in the NFL a little bit. So at this point, it's kind of maybe he kind of knows he's got something lined up to what he can do, but at the same time, it's man, I wouldn't be trying to make so many enemies and whatnot, and that's just a life thing more than anything else.
I noticed I had them wrong. I had copied over our USFL or CFL week 2 there. We were talking USFL week 2. We were in a time machine there. Now we're talking USFL week 10. I saw a lot of that, and I didn't feel like I knew enough to get involved in that. But you guys obviously sent over in the private, I think Mike Mitchell had reported, and the prevailing theory is Mike doesn't care about the USFL or know about the USFL, and I just saw a lot of media accounts I had been shared my way of discrediting or talking receipts and stuff, and then he played. I don't know. I didn't know enough about it. It seemed really messy with the Maulers there.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we could talk about the exterior part of this, but the Maulers were the better team, regardless. Troy Williams talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. Able to do the little things right, not get hit as much, move around, take those. And I talk about this all the time. The ability to just go from a second and 10 compared to a 2nd and 17, that's where you make your money, because not only are you obviously in a better position for a first down, but like now you're not punting 7 yards back and all that goofy stuff. So it's like he did get sacked 3 times, but I know 2 of them were on 3rd down. So that's kind of your like, I'm going to hold on to the ball a little bit more. And like, see if something happens. And, so 3rd down sacks, some coaches don't really care about that because, you're trying to make a play versus a first down sack. So it depends on field position as well. Like if I'm I don't remember where down in distance, but if I'm at the 5-yard line, it's 3rd and 5, and I'm trying to make a play rolling out and I get sacked for a 5-yard loss. These guys are professional kickers. I'm not going to be losing my mind that my 22-yard field goal went to a 27-yard field goal. You know what I mean? I want my quarterback to move around a little bit more and make a play here and there and all that goofy stuff. So.
What's next for DeAndre Johnson here? I made a joke. The Edmonton Elks in the CFL had a really horrendous game against the BC Lions shutout, which is incredibly hard to get to do in the CFL to get shut out. And Derek Taylor tweeted out, who can play quarterback for the Elks? I said, I'd call up DeAndre Johnson and say, hey, you want to come north here? I mean, but I'll joking aside, and we'll kind of do our USFL. We'll do it, we'll obviously do a recap for the championship. Pat's going to be on the regular show Friday. We got to figure it out, but we're going to do an all USFL team and kind of preview the playoffs on the normal Friday show. But what's next for DeAndre here? Just kind of a knee-jerk reaction.
I mean, I think I don't know, man. Like, I think he's kind of hit that tipping point as a passer right now. Last year he was kind of, I don't want to use the word coddled because he definitely wasn't, but last year he was able to use his skill set of, running the read options and whatnot. And because then they could just throw Luis Perez as a pocket passer type guy. This year, have the brunt of the ball of the pocket passing and whatnot. And at times look great. At other times look terrible. Next year, I think he comes back to the Generals. You know what I mean? Like 3rd year in the system with Mike Riley. But Eric Barrier, man, he was picked up on waivers. If any of these guys are going to go to the CFL, I think it's Dakota Prukop, personally, just because of familiarity with the system and everything like that. But, like, Eric Barrier has been, like, a pretty undervalued prospect. I think he was a Harlan Hill winner Walter Payton Award winner at Eastern Washington. Was with the Panthers last year and the majority of this year. Guy's pretty athletic. A little bit undersized in that 5'11", comes from that kind of like Mike Leach air raid offense. But, I'm definitely intrigued to see if they transition to him because he does have a stronger arm, but he's still decently athletic. Plays a lot faster on film than he does on his 40. I think he runs like a 4.8 on his 40. But overall, like I'd like to see Barrier get a shot. And, with them claiming him off waivers, maybe that's kind of the game plan as far as like, okay, now he's on our roster for 2024. Let's throw these 2 guys at the dartboard and see what happens. Cause they had some skill players at receiver. I think Randy Satterfield was on that team for a little bit. He got hurt. Alonzo Moore, ageless wonder, was their best receiver, but get a little bit younger there. DeMornay Peterson L was supposed to be a big playmaker for them. He got hurt. Didn't utilize Cam Eccles-Looper as much as I thought they could have, but overall he had a decent season. I would like to see them get a more dynamic playmaker at tight end. I saw a lot of drop passes from Woody Bradham and Brandon Bowman a lot this year, and that was in the USFL. I made a tweet a couple weeks ago, like 7 of the 8 teams had guys at tight end. So to me, like if they can improve on that position, I think that team becomes obviously way more competitive. But I mean, that's not really anything profound. You get better players, you're more competitive, right? Like as profound as that may sound, I threw some fancy words in there, but that's the reality of the situation for New Jersey.
In terms of the playoffs here, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Canton was always going to host the North one, right? There wasn't any chance of doing it at Ford Field. So, Maulers here get home field advantage here against the Panthers.
And I talked to a couple people from the Michigan area and I don't know how many they are, but they did say that they're like when they talk to people in Michigan at Ford Field that they were going to come down to Ohio. It's not the craziest drive. It's not the closest drive, but I mean, that's good. I'm expecting to see a pretty decent crowd like in Canton. I mean, it gets warmer too. Summer break. Hey, let's go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and then watch this football game.
I don't. Happy to be proven wrong. Would love to be proven wrong. I don't know. I think the championship game. It's a tough sell. I mean, Maulers haven't exactly drawn the house in Canton already, right? I mean, like we have, and I know. I mean, I know it's the playoffs and all that. This to me is a really unappealing playoff game. So I just don't know.
I do think Protective is going to like do pretty well. I mean, they've always showed out for the Stallions. You know, like I know there were some couple games here and there where it wasn't as air quotes sexy, but I mean, whenever we've talked about like the USFL games and like their crowds and whatnot, I mean, like Birmingham this year wasn't really anything too crazy in my opinion, or not too. When I say too crazy, like too crazy in a negative way. Like I feel like they've always had a decent showing 90% of their games, and like Memphis, it seemed like every other week. You know, when the Showboats played, I felt like some weeks it looked good, some weeks it didn't. But I definitely. And they're doing some advertising I've seen on like the like AL.com and Birmingham Sports, and like, you know, Luke Miller has been like sharing stuff on like the radio stations that they've been kind of pushing it a little bit more, which is good. You know, I think I'm really excited to see what like the Birmingham crowd looks like, honestly.
I will say though, bookmark this: the NBC game will still draw more. Like for TV viewership, I guarantee you the NBC game outdraws the Fox one here. 5:00 Pacific versus 4. Just the NBC has on by far average higher than, and like I said, I think it was a week ago we were talking radiance. I said it doesn't matter. Yeah, the matchups don't matter. It's the time slots in the networks, and NBC has proven to be. I don't obviously know what else is on that day, but watch that for all the whenever we poo this North Division game, it'll still draw more on TV probably.
I mean, it's NBC, you know, Saturday night type thing. Like, you know, you're gonna get people at the bar watching it. You're gonna get people, you know, it's gonna be on at the bars and whatnot. You know, so I mean, they're like I go down to the Ozarks in Missouri all the time, and the games are always on at night. Like even without me changing it, you know.
I was gonna say you're going through and changing all that. It's like when you go to the Apple Store and subscribe to your YouTube channel on all the phones there.
You man, I need to bump me up to almost 700. But yeah, man, like I mean, it's not the sexiest matchup, but like I'm more bought into this Stallions game, man. Like let's you know, it's kind of weird. Like, you know, I got a lot of love for Magoo, a lot of love for MBT, and to see either one of those guys win a championship, especially MBT, obviously, because I know we have CFL love and whatnot, but either one of those guys, especially a guy like Magoo, who was the starter last year and then gets cut, or not gets cut, gets hurt. MBT coming from Canada, winning the Grey Cup, but like, you know, he's got doubters. Did he actually win the Grey Cup? And it's like, I mean, that's the matchup, man. I think a lot of people are intrigued for, but you know, the Maulers winning this kind of would be kind of cool just because of how ridiculous their team was last year and essentially a doormat and whatnot. To see them, you know, rise from the ashes would be a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I think USFL reposted like Boogie Roberts, you know, worst to first or whatever, talking through all that. Hope he's okay too, right? He was kind of banged up. He had to leave the game. Birmingham here over Memphis, the Saturday night, 27-20. Memphis, kind of their, you know, streak ran out here, didn't have enough. Like you've talked a lot of Birmingham already. Any other thoughts on this particular matchup?
I mean, I think Cole Kelly's like a year away. He's one of the guys I want to see come back next year. Because of how big his body was and whatnot, I could see him getting like NFL workouts, but he does need a little bit more development as a passer. Sometimes when I watch him, and I forgot my football today, but I see him throwing the ball kind of like come up like that sometimes, and it messes up his timing a little bit because you're seeing Papali catching the ball like this. And he also keeps, like, obviously behind him, but he's also keeping the ball up a little bit more. And you saw a couple plays to Osiris Mitchell. Well, Mitchell, like, had two hands on the ball, and yes, he should have caught the football, but he's leaping up and he's getting, dealing with a lot more contested catches where if he brings it down a little bit. And, I wasn't a quarterback. I study these mechanics a lot, but I'm trying to think, is that just because of how tall he is and whatnot? Is he not, driving with his feet? And, like, when you really break it down, I think Cole Kelly needs to work on his mechanics a little bit, because some of these passes that he overthrew were, you're kind of like, man, or even his completions, you're like, man, if he threw it on the numbers instead of behind the guy, Papali's still running for another, 15 yards. A guy I really wanted to highlight on the Showboats, and he didn't have the craziest game, but a guy named John Atkins, interior defensive lineman for them. He played at Georgia. That guy had a way better season than a lot of people give him credit for. He did win the Player of the Week award this year, but I mean, he had a really good season, and someone I just want to give a quick shout out for. I don't know if he's watching this or whatnot, but I mean, some guys do. But overall, I mean, coming from this Brady White, it's kind of like fetch. It's not going to be a thing, Gretchen. Coming from this Brady White debacle, another guy that they kind of forced on us, to see them be a 5-5 team from a 4-6 team last year. Improvement, fun team to watch. Cole Kelly was fun to watch when he was on. So, guy I want to see come back. But they had some nice players this year. Kyrie Woods kind of came out of nowhere, became one of the highest rated players in the USFL from PFF. I mean, Vinny Papali really was a guy last year who's kind of an afterthought. Rashad Davis gets hurt. They picked up Osiris Mitchell, who I think he was with the XFL for 5 minutes. I know he was back and forth on some practice squads last year. To see him and kind of take that role after Rashad Davis got hurt over Osiris Mitchell. Derek Dillon, I think, solidified being a special teams player of the year. So, I mean, they got pieces, a little bit more improvement on the offensive line, and whatnot. But, I mean, they were a fun team to watch at times, especially once they went to Kelly over the Brady White experiment.
Yeah, that's good. It's exciting here, Stallions. Like I said, I don't know if there was ever too much in doubt here, but obviously 8-2 going into that. Anything else on this one? We have the I want to talk the Sunday game. So anything else on the Birmingham here?
No, and once again, the Magoo thing is always going to be just the Stallions in general have dealt with so many injuries, and then another gentleman who stepped up for Birmingham this weekend was Brady Buck. I think he had like 12 tackles, 9 tackles, or something like that. Or Brody Buck, Northwest Division II guy, I think, Northwest Missouri State. He, Quentin Poling stepped away from the team. Scooby Wright was hurt, so it was nice to see that guy who was cut earlier in the season to come back and, play a pretty decent game and get a nomination for Defensive Player of the Week.
This is interesting here. I was sitting there at this Father's Day. We were getting ready to go over to our in-laws for Father's Day dinner. I was watching. I go, oh, goody. I'm going to get here. I get to watch the whole New Orleans Breakers, Houston Gamblers game. I'm sitting there editing my dance recital videos I was filming, watching this. I tweeted out, I said, for any fathers watching this game right now, I publicly apologize if you're sitting there with your kids watching this game. This was the worst first half of football I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, and I mean, there was some clock management. The Gamblers have had that all year. I felt like the Breakers were kind of toying around with the Gamblers for a little bit, but when MBT needed to make plays, he did. And then they kind of slowed it down. Someone we've talked about in nauseam on the Breakers is Wes Hills. I mean, I think he would average like 2 yards a carry or something like that. I mean, sometimes the stat line for running backs is a lot different than it really, tells the whole story, if that makes sense. So a lot of tough yards, but Hills is a pretty underrated player because one, he almost had 1,000 yards all purpose and he didn't return kicks. So that was an impressive feat in my opinion. And two, like just kind of grinding out 10 games healthy for the majority of them. that receiving core we talk about all the time too. D. Anderson, Johnny Dixon, Jonathan Adams, and Sage Surratt really rounded out. Those guys made plays when they needed to, aided by some bad blunders by the gamblers and whatnot. I don't know why Curtis Johnson didn't go for it on fourth down. I think they were under 2 minutes, and then you even saw John DiFilippo asking why is he not calling a timeout. Because I don't know if it was Klatt that was the PA play-by-play, but he made a good point. It's like it's 3rd and 9. You might get them thinking about throwing the football, and then it's an incomplete pass. Like, now you have a decent amount of time. Obviously, a blunder on that field goal, the miscommunication between Hunter Nicewander and the long snapper. But the biggest thing I got a little confused about is they went with Montel Cozart for a little bit. He threw 2 passes, 1 pick, Devontae Diggs. But when he rolled out, he just kind of dumped it off. Like, he didn't throw it out of bounds or whatnot. He was out of the pocket and everything, and he didn't actually throw it out of bounds. He kind of just dumped it, and Diggs made a good play to pick off the ball and whatnot. Nice little tiptoe interception on the sideline. But at the same time, it's kind of like, why aren't you just throwing that away, like, out in the stands, So I don't know if that's an experience thing. Cozart's been in the USFL for 2 years, played a decent amount in Canada. I believe he had a cup of tea in the NFL, like in a training camp, if I can't remember. But regardless, the guy's played a decent amount of football. He knows better.
It just was weird, and I thought the announcers too. I think it was like really hard on Curtis Johnson too, like talking. He doesn't know what he's doing, and we're like really, you're getting this from first year, whatever. Kind of, it just the whole thing was a mess, and not going and using the timeout. I don't know. It felt, and I had messages sent my way of these games should be better in week 10. Like we're kind of at the point. Like yeah. I get the first couple weeks. Like we're week 10 here going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Curtis Johnson definitely dropped the ball on some coaching and timeouts and clock management and whatnot. I mean, that's my opinion on it. Call me wrong, but I think if you're a Gamblers fan, you won't disagree. Overall, I just, it is, once again, it is week 10, but, John DiFilippo did a good job managing the game and whatnot. He's got a lot of experience and everything like that. So, but you are absolutely correct. Like, it was extremely disappointing to kind of see what happened with the Gamblers. And do I think New Orleans wins that game? Because do I think DiFilippo opens it up a little bit and kind of presses on and does what he needs to do to win the game? Yeah, 100%. But at the same time, it's make it a little bit harder for DiFilippo and the Breakers.
So here's the thing here. I'm looking, and now we have this, right? We have the 7-3 New Orleans Southern Division here going up. Like, I just don't even feel like if this is the New Orleans team that comes out next week, I just don't even think they have a chance. I mean, that's what is so frustrating with these end of season poor games like this is we're trying to get to the playoffs, and it always kills me where it's like, oh yeah, we barely got in, and we're barely. It's like, yeah, now you're going to the playoffs. Like you need to have some sort of momentum. I mean, I get that in the NFL all the time. Like, oh, this team, they lost 6 in a row, but then if they just win here, they're going to get it. You're like, yeah, and then what? You're going to lose next week. Like it doesn't. I mean, I get okay, your paychecks or whatever kind of like. I just don't see New Orleans having any shot here at all. Do you?
I mean, maybe we could, kind of seem like a little bit more of a closed playbook as well for DiFilippo in this game. Once they kind of realized where they were at and managing the game to win it, I do think that he's gonna open the whole playbook up because not to sound tacky, but it is win or go home. So hopefully we see that because DiFilippo's a good coach. Talk about it all the time. They got some players on that offensive side of the ball that are fringe NFL guys. Let this quarterback rip. Let's see good MBT. Let's see bad MBT. I'd rather him go out there and throw 4 picks, really pushing the ball down the field, making some risky throws, than put up a cute stat line of 15 of 23 for 180 yards and 1 touchdown, and they lose 14 to 27 because the stat line will look good, but we'll see what's going on.
It was funny. They had the graphic where they were talking. I like the win streak or loss streak of the Breakers. I'm like, okay, it's a 10-week season. Like it's hardly like streaky, like we won whatever, but they had won and then undefeated and they lost it. I love they had like the shirtless McLeod like with his beard at the beach. I was like, this is. I mean, it was hot. I was like, I want to get a copy of that for my wallpaper here. Can I get that?
I mean, I'm sure go back to the app and screenshot it if you got it.
I wanted to. Anything else here on Breaker? It just, it was just bad. I mean, I'll be curious what the ratings are. I'm sure it'll be good because it was on. What was this one? No, this was the. Of course, they don't have the TV anymore. I think this was like not on like the normal. I can't remember. When I watch it on Fubo, it's like it's just on. I don't have to pay attention to what it is. But any other thoughts on the Gamblers Breakers?
I mean, no. I mean, I'm really hoping, like I talked about, that DiFilippo opens it up and kind of lets out all the stops. And, they've had success running like jet sweeps and whatnot as well. We didn't really see much of that this game. So maybe we'll see some of that with Eli Stove. He's had some success doing that. So the biggest thing that they do that I love is when they put Sage Surratt in motion and then have him run a drag route underneath. But he's going behind the offensive line. That's opened up a lot of plays for them over the season. So, you throw Sage Surratt, 6 receptions, 70+ yards. I think this game, I do think Birmingham wins. I do think it is going to be a good game. But at the same time, it's like, and I hope I'm wrong because I was wrong in the XFL playoffs, but I do think like our true USFL championship is coming from the South Division this Sunday.
We're going to do obviously our preview here coming up at the end of the week, but to me, Maulers, they're kind of coming in as the underdogs against the Stallions. That to me seems, if we have to kind of make chicken salad here out of this for the championship game, that's what I would like to see. Obviously, McLeod and kind of the guys over there. Ideally, what would you prefer to see in the championship game?
And I do like this, and we'll talk about this game. I do like this, this Michigan versus Stallions matchup. If that would be pretty ridiculous in my eyes because of like EJ Perry just out of nowhere getting the start and then not knowing the playbook and having miscues and like just making chicken salad out of chicken feces and whatnot. Like, I mean, some of these plays that EJ Perry had success on was like amazing to see. Like it was just like a kid out there just like it was very. I don't want to use Johnny Manziel as an example because it wasn't like Johnny Manziel, but very just like backyard football. Like, all right, we're going to figure this out, guys. Let's do it type thing. He provided that spark for the Panthers, against a Stars team that I think we all agree was better. And like, Corbin didn't do much, 24 yards. I think he had like 13 carries or something like that, 14 carries. Scott was kind of limited, using more in like the blocking back and whatnot. So, I mean, I would love to see EJ Perry and what he can do, his capabilities, with another week or two in the offense and like open it up a little bit more.
Pat, I thought they were coming for you there. I heard the sirens. I thought they were coming. I thought this was the end of this. So here, the big final. This is the Stars are my team. I mean, they were my team back. Brian Scott back in the day, and all this kind of stuff here. Case has been on the show. What happened here? Collapse of the Stars here. Michigan finally got a home win, right? What do we make of this?
I mean, the Stars' offense on paper didn't give up any sacks, but like. Sometimes those pressures, which they don't always record, mean a lot more because Case was running around. Surprise. He was wincing every time he got hit. Breland Speaks. That right tackle on the Stars, it was the first guy's name was Burden, and then the second guy, Toth. Toth was a Division III guy from, I think, Overland University. Who was with the Bears for like 5 minutes, was signed this week. He's thrown in there going against Levi Bell, holding on almost every play. It was, I mean, once Himmelman got out, they shook up the offensive line a little bit. It just did not look good. I mean, I've been on this Himmelman train for like 3 weeks now, and how crucial he was, especially going up against Breland Speaks. And at the end of the game, you saw him in an arm sling. It looked like, I mean, Case is a great quarterback. Like the grit, way more athletic than we probably give him credit for. The lack of running game and how he was able to like how he was able to make up for it. Like, I mean, there's not enough good things to say about Case Cookus. I saw some people get giddy about the fake punt, but Kai Nakua made a great play, and he's been such an asset for the Panthers that, like, he made, I mean, I don't know how many other defensive backs make that play. Like, he literally jumped over this guy and swatted the ball away, and it was a clean play, and it was just uber impressive to see that happen. Especially Thompson did a decent job on that fake punt. The backup quarterback was the personal protector and rolls out, threw the ball in a decent spot, but Nakua just made a great play on it, and that that changes the game a little bit. Granted, they missed a field goal as well, but that's going to happen. The Panthers, I think, missed a field goal as well, so you trade points for there. But this Panthers special teams unit, man, was just on point with that block kick, or excuse me, that block punt, and then Marcus Sims changing the field. Because even if you're not scoring, now you're putting the ball in their back half of the field and whatnot. So that changes a lot of things.
Comment here, rock and roll alien. Case Cookus should ask for his walking papers. Top non-NFL landing spots: Sea Dragons or Roughnecks.
Man, I don't think he goes to, if he went to the XFL, I don't think he'd go to Houston. I think AJ is pretty set with his guys as far as the ride or die there. I mean, I think June would like him in Seattle.
Like, I just don't know what the Stars do here, because it's one of those, like, we were there last year and then severely regressed this year. Like, I don't know if I see Bart doing like a whole off season, like him gearing up to kind of do this again in this point in his life. Do you get what I mean? Like, do you see the Stars like really overhauling in the off season to like make another go with Case or whoever?
I mean, they need to figure out this offensive line. That was their biggest bugaboo the whole year, I think he got sacked 15 times in the first 3 weeks, and then Himmelman comes in and it improved a decent amount. That's really the reality of this. That's what he needs to do, is kind of overhaul that whole offensive line, and then you could put me back there at the quarterback. I got 5 seconds to throw. I'm going to hit my drag routes. And they had such a dynamic group of playmakers. It's kind of sad to not see them progress. I don't know. I don't know who's the next, I don't know what their team looks like next year, because they did have so many great receivers and whatnot. And even a guy who's a late season pickup, Cyril Grayson, athletic guy and whatnot, could he be a rental type thing? Because, he's probably on NFL short list. Corey Coleman put together a great season. I mean, Matt Colburn got hurt, but Dexter Williams put together some decent, tape and whatnot. What do we see from this team in year 3 of the Bart Andrus era? I don't know.
Because to me, you get to that point with some of these guys, and I think the XFL, you get through the novelty of year 1. Okay, now we're going into year 2. Let's figure this out, and then you're kind of getting to the point that all right, what are we doing here? Like, am I really into this? Have I really bought in? I think year 3, and we'll see next year with the XFL, obviously, but I think it's just a weird timing thing of okay, we've kind of seen what do I love doing this? Do I not? I'll just be curious to see kind of what a lot of these teams, the Mike Riley, is he still doing this right? I know his wife has health concerns and things like that. Is he back again? Some of these guys I'll be curious to keep an eye on.
I think Riley comes back because of and I don't know how much he cares about milestones, but he's only 4 or 5 wins away from 200 as a head coach throughout his coaching tenure. So maybe that could bring him in. Bob Stoops did an interview where they were you're at 199, you coming back? And he's like, hell yeah, get that 200. So, and also the thing is about Riley too, is he has his kids and whatnot, or his grandkids that always accompany him. And those are memories that you'll never give up. Right. So it's as long as it works out for him, I could definitely see him, being a part of this machine for another season, especially with those 2 factors. But in the end, like you said, family is more important to everyone in these leagues. That a lot of these coaches take these jobs in these leagues because of the family flexibility. So we'll see what happens on that front. I mean, I'd like to see Riley come back and get that 200. I think Bart's kind of a fun mentor, like a leader of men. That I think he's really crucial for younger players and developing players and whatnot, to not only teach them how to be football players but also like decent human beings. And he talked about it last year in United of Football. Like, he's a teacher by trade, so like I think that's kind of what keeps him going. But it's easier to say that when you're coming off a championship game, win or lose, versus a 4-6 season, which I think everyone believes that they underperformed.
Are you surprised they didn't do the United by Football this season? I mean, I know it wasn't a barn burner success, but were you surprised just to kind of develop more of these storylines?
I mean, I was, because I mean, I liked it, but I mean, my opinion doesn't really matter. I'm just one guy type thing. So I could really, like, I don't know what their ratings were. I don't know how much it cost. I don't know how worth it was to them. So, I mean, if I could have less United by Football, but it guarantees this league to succeed for 10 years, I'm willing for that trade off of not knowing that Ben Holmes doesn't know who Aaron Rodgers is.
I guess wrapping up, yeah, because I mean, like, obviously started the show talking with fan control football and all of that. It is very capital intensive, and I'll be curious to see kind of. I know talking with Mike, and Mike's been on our show and in the chat and stuff. USFL underperformed this year, right? Versus what I think league executives wanted and expected, both TV and in attendance on here. So I'll be curious to kind of see what their game plan is, because we'll do the whole deep dive after the season, but like, just, when we had Greg Parks on, when we were talking the XFL kind of season overall ratings, just putting these USFL games on more networks, better time slots, didn't necessarily equate to more ratings. So, I mean, does USFL, does Fox go head in here in the next season? Are we ramping up even more marketing? Like, I don't know what costs they're willing to take for this, like, kind of filler content, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's not filler content to the players and coaches, but I think overall to the TV network, that's kind of what they view it as.
Yeah, man, I have no idea. Like, I'm not trying to fence sit on this at all, but like, we don't know what their analytics are. We don't know what they're okay with and what we're not okay with. Like, I mean, it's the same thing when you talk about this $60 million loss. Like, if I'm projected to lose 80 and I lose 60, finance guys will tell you that is a win. I mean, any startup, there's going to be losses, especially when you have investors and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm just more curious to see about like what the expectations are. And obviously, like, I don't think, that's information we're never going to be privy to, but I mean, we'll find out in a couple of years if this is still going, or they're or if it's not. Like, it doesn't get much simpler than that. Eventually there's a red line where they hit either one of these leagues that they're just like, yeah, we're good type thing. Like, but in the end, who's the real victims, right? It's always going to be the players and the coaches and whatnot. Like, hell, even the referees, like 11 of these USFL referees are in the NFL now. I think I've mentioned it on the show. Like, last year, USFL players collectively made almost $9 million, like, being on rosters. Like, 800 jobs are connected to this league. So, and we're not even getting into the background characters of like Fox interns who have to do this in order to like succeed here and then go to like the next thing wherever Fox puts at them. So because of all that factors, in my opinion, I think the league is here for a long time because of all the underlying benefits that Fox can get out of this, from their crews to their technicians to all that stuff, where they're doing all this like exterior and extracurricular activities and essentially doing tryouts of their own for their people before they go on Fox on Sundays or NFL on Fox. So I don't think that gets talked about a lot.
Well, even like, yeah, you had like Mike Robinson here, and I've seen him featured a lot more this season. Last year, it didn't seem like he was really all in invested, I felt like this year. And he's been on with Joel sometimes and stuff. I thought it's been a good look. A couple last questions, comments here. Mike wants to know, are Case Cookis and the other 2-year players officially free agents? Well, Case would be on a different deal because he was released and then signed back on. I think all the players are on 2-year now regardless, right? Do you know any different?
I knew we had a lot more, like, and Mike Mitchell's going to have to, like, clear a lot of this up, and I'm sure he will, because we had, like, these 2 waves of contracts last year where half of them were on 2-year deals, and then half of them were on, like, the 12-31 out. But if you joined the NFL, you were free to do what you pleased and whatnot. And I don't know what Case's deal is, like, literally.
Because he would be different because he was in that initial wave, but then him going to the Rams, right? That would avoided or ended his whatever, and then I believe he is re-signed. I believe Case has.
Well, and it's also like Case talked about this as well. Like, I think Case is staying in the USFL because, one, it's just a continuity for him as well, and he's proven that he can get an NFL opportunity from the USFL. And I think this year he proved his stock a little bit more as well, especially his grittiness and toughness, his ability as a rusher was really showcased. Like, I know he had a 70-yard rush last year against the Panthers, but I mean, this year he was consistent. I think he totaled over 300 rushing yards as well. Like, and a lot of these weren't, read option plays. It was him, kind of doing some improv plays. He had 278 rushing yards, which is good for 11th in the league. I mean, a lot of that was, just his natural ability to kind of figure things out. So he showed off the athletic ability, he showed off toughness, he showed off that his ankle/leg is still good to go. I mean, why not? Like, he's got a good thing going. You know what I mean? Like, he's definitely a face of this league. He's proven he can get to the NFL from this league. Case is one of those guys that I don't think the time frame of the league benefits him or discredits him in any way. It's like, if a team is going after Case Cookis, they're going after Case Cookis because they know who he is, and his film has already proven who he is. So him playing in February versus him playing in April doesn't matter much.
I hope he gets more looks because obviously coming off of last year and the injury, and then he had a wedding and stuff, he got married. I hope that last question for me, because I know you have a hard out. Yeah. Do you think he's played well enough this year to even with them losing here and not making the playoffs, the Case has played well enough?
Yeah, no, I'm 100%. Like, I think he played even better this year. I think he played even better this year, just considering some of the things he had to go through. Like, I mean, Corey Coleman makes your life a little bit easier, but that rushing attack last year was a little bit more solid, and they had better offensive line last year. 2 guys I've always talked about is Gunnar Vogel and Alex Akingbulu. Akingbulu is on an NFL active roster right now. He didn't play last year, but he was signed to an NFL active roster for the Commanders. So it's like, you lose guys like that who are fringe NFL guys. Like, what do you expect, And then you saw what happened when they picked up Himmelman, who was a fringe NFL guy, and you saw the vast improvement that he put out, like his product and whatnot, not just Himmelman, but Cookis as well. So, I mean, Case is definitely like, he's going to be hitting the workout wire. Some of these teams have already begun cutting their UDFAs. I mean, there's definitely a short list of guys. Like, you've seen some guys get cut in the NFL right now, and the timeline kind of adds up. Like, USFL season is ending. Like, maybe there's like a guy like John Shea Kirkland from the Roughnecks who was hurt. Like, he's getting healthy, or like teams are like, okay, we're going to make this push for Corey Coleman. And that was something I know. Rex Sanhara became the 30th XFL player to get signed, but Mike talked about there was 24 roster spots available. Injuries haven't happened yet, but some of those 24 roster spots, there's plenty of free agents right now, like younger player free agents, that they could have signed just to fill the roster spot. With the USFL like winding down, in my mind, that means like, okay, there's at least 10 to 20 guys already. Sorry about this train.
That's okay.
That NFL teams are already like, okay, what day is today? June 20th. When they're eligible on June 27th, that's a guy we're signing.
We'll get you out of here today. Pat's got it out. We appreciate it. Everyone stopping by. Like I said, we did CFL preview or recap yesterday with Hussey over there with Evan Wilsmar. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then obviously today, winding this down, Pat will be on the normal Friday show this week. I have Rick Saratella coming by talking kind of rookie draft for the XFL, kind of recap that, how the team's kind of bolstered up. I know we did our initial chats with John Vogel and Coach Craig Sport and that over there. And then I think Derek Taylor, CFL, voice of the Blue Bombers, is going to be coming on as well to talk about that. So it should be good. Winding down here. Anything else from you, Pat? We'll get out of here.
Not really. Per the usual, just, pushing my own stuff. Tomorrow I have one interview confirmed with a college coach local to St. Louis, and then I'm still waiting to hear back for a player as well. And then, once again, it's, been a little bit of a grind. I think we're all hitting some fatigue right now as far as with football. My workload has increased for my full-time gig. So, it's definitely becoming a little bit more of football fatigue. But in the end, to the casual viewer who doesn't, have to report about every game and all that stuff, I definitely think this is, the golden age for football. And the biggest thing is, I'm really excited to see if my theory checks out with a lot of these NFL teams, spying USFL guys, because like I said, if you have 20, every roster spot is so crucial for an NFL team, especially in camp with injuries and keeping guys fresh and whatnot. In my opinion, I think we're going to see 10 to 15 and possibly 20 guys get some quick looks, once the USFL season is over. We saw with the XFL with the workouts, but I mean, it makes sense, right? I'm not saying anything too crazy about that, right?
Well, I know one person in particular who will be very excited about the USFL signings here. Your boy will be very excited to get these signings going.
Yeah. And I definitely think NFL teams are probably calling Fox right now, hey, so your season's over. John Smith played pretty well. I think he'd look good in, New York Jet Green. What are we doing here, Cheech?
Well, it'll be exciting. We'll be tracking all that. I'm sure Pat will as well. Appreciate it, everyone. Like I said, check back Friday. Should be a good show. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. Take care.
Thanks, guys.